Hey guys, welcome back to the Pausing Porn podcast. I'm Mark, and today we're talking about a big challenge you have all faced in your recovery. This is your urges. Whether you've been in recovery for a week or even a year, you've probably noticed how challenging your urges can feel. They come and go without any warning and can lead you back to porn, even though you have different intentions now. In this episode, I'll define what an urge is, why you get them, and how to frame your mindset around urges for a successful recovery. Let's begin. Okay, so what exactly is an urge? An urge is a short term, intense desire to turn back to porn. In scientific terms, an urge is a signal from your brain's dopamine and emotion systems. So when your brain senses stress, boredom, loneliness, or even a cue it's learned to associate with porn, it releases dopamine. And that dopamine creates a feeling of anticipation and motivation, pushing you towards the behavior your brain remembers as the quickest way to feel better. That signal, that pull towards the old behavior, that's what we call an urge. Now that we've defined what an urge is, how do we know what we're feeling as an urge? I'm sure urges show up differently for everyone, but I'll explain how an urge feels when I get one. The first thing I notice is a warm, welcoming feeling in my chest. And this feeling does not stay in the same place over the course of the 20 to 30-minute urge. I notice it'll move around the left side of my chest, going up or down, side to side. And while this happens, I also get a shortness of breath. Depending on the intensity of the urge, the shortness of breath also ranges in its intensity. If I had to describe the urge in relation to another emotion, I'd say it presents itself as anxiety's warm, magnetic cousin. It's very welcoming, it's warm, it's enticing. Whereas anxiety, it's off putting and it feels like there's something wrong. But I do say it's like anxiety's cousin because early in my recovery, I would often mix the two up. I would believe I'm anxious, but instead I'm just experiencing an urge. And a huge differential for me, which made it much easier early on, is that urges don't just come with physical sensations. They're also paired with thoughts of relapse. The thoughts of watching pornography again. It's important for you guys to be able to understand what an urge feels like for you. This is so you can build awareness, because having awareness on what is going on is the first step to sitting through any urges. If you can't recognize what you're feeling is an urge, then it makes it much harder not to follow what the urge is telling you to do, which is watch pornography and relapse, versus actually sitting with the feeling of the urge, becoming aware that's what you're experiencing, and then choosing to move forward once it's passed. If urges only represent a risk of relapse, then how do we make them go away? That's a good question. And the truth is, we can't make them go away automatically. We don't have a secret medication, and there's no big red button that you could press to make your urges go away forever. Trust me, guys. I prayed for this. These do not happen. But through recovery, here's what I eventually learned. Getting rid of urges should not be your goal. When I finally accepted that, something shifted in my recovery. I stopped trying to eliminate urges from the source and started learning how to actually respond to them. That mindset shift completely changed the way I viewed recovery. And funny enough, I actually learned that lesson from treating an anxiety disorder I used to struggle with, not from primarily focusing on porn addiction. I think I've mentioned this before in the podcast, but if not, I want to share it with you guys now. I used to struggle with an anxiety disorder called pure OCD. And I'm pretty sure most of you guys don't know what that is. So pure OCD is just a type of OCD, which is an anxiety disorder, where your brain sends you intrusive thoughts, which are designed to trigger anxiety. Then from there, the anxiety leads to a compulsion to try and get relief. And when you go to get that temporary relief, It creates a cycle. It goes intrusive thought, anxiety, compulsion, temporary relief, and then intrusive thought again to restart the cycle. When I was diagnosed with it when I was in high school, it was considered severe because how much it impacted my life. I had sleepless nights sometimes due to the constant anxiety. And honestly, it's a huge reason why I turned to pornography because porn became that escape from that terrible cycle I was in with OCD. So, for the first couple years of treating OCD, I thought the problems itself were the intrusive thoughts. I believed that if I could somehow stop the intrusive thought from coming in, then I would be finally okay. But that wasn't realistic. The reason is because everyone has intrusive thoughts, whether you have an anxiety disorder or if you don't. But the difference between me and someone without OCD was that I obsessed over those intrusive thoughts to try to find a solution and relieve myself from anxiety, whereas other people didn't pay any mind to these intrusive thoughts they get whatsoever. Through therapy and recovery from OCD, I learned how to sit with the discomfort of my intrusive thoughts. I learned how to feel the anxiety and resist the urge to find a instant relief from that anxiety and let the wave fade out on its own. Over time, doing this practice changed everything for me. Today, I can honestly say I no longer suffer from OCD, which is amazing. I still get intrusive thoughts every now and then, just like everyone else does, but they don't control me whatsoever. Now, the cool thing is, with intrusive thoughts, is the more I practice sitting with them and not trying to make them go away, the less they showed up in frequency on their own. When I was first diagnosed with OCD when it was severe, I would get dozens and dozens and dozens every single hour. And now I would say I get a few intrusive thoughts a month. Like the frequency dropped by 99%. And when I receive them, they don't faze me at all in the slightest. Okay, so how does this tie back to porn addiction? Well, I think it ties back to porn addiction perfectly because urges work the exact same way. You don't need to make these urges disappear. What you need to do is be able to learn to sit with urges, accept that you're feeling an urge, feel the discomfort, live in the moment with the urge, and then move on with your day, right? Urges only last 20 to 30 minutes. You don't need to push them away. You don't need to fear them. They're not something to be afraid of. But what we need to learn to be able to do is build tolerance to withstand these urges. First, we definitely need awareness so we can recognize when we're getting an urge. And once we have that awareness that, yes, I am feeling an urge, we need to learn how to sit with it. Because just as my example with intrusive thoughts, the more you sit with urges, the less frequent they will come. And the more you sit with urges and you don't act out on what your brain is telling you to do, which is go back to porn, the faster you rewire your brain. That is the path to recovery, guys. A good way to think about urges is to imagine them like notifications on your phone. Every time you get a notification, your phone is just saying something needs your attention. That's exactly what an urge is. It's your brain sending you a little alert. And something I want you guys to know is just because you got a notification, it does not mean you have to open it. You get that choice. When an urge shows up, it feels like you have to click it. It feels urgent and it feels automatic. But at the end of the day, the urge is just a message. And you always have the option to acknowledge it, that you have received that message, and then ignore it and move on with your day. The tricky part is your brain's operating system, which are your habits and your neural pathways, are running an old version of code. For years, it learned that porn equaled relief. So when you're stressed, when you're bored, when you're lonely, your brain sends that notification saying, remember how this used to make the feeling go away? But that's the problem. The system just hasn't been updated yet. It's still running on an old software that assumes porn is the fix. So when you click on that notification and you're giving in to the urge, you're not getting what your brain is promising you. Sure, there will be a temporary sense of relief, an escape that you get. But if you look at the pros versus the cons, I mean, you guys are listening to this podcast for a reason. You already know it's a net negative. Following the urge and relapsing just followed by guilt, shame, brain fog, disconnection, isolation, everything you guys already know. And the notification you got was just false advertising. What recovery teaches you is how to recognize that notification without reacting to it. You acknowledge that the notification was received. You can see it pop up. You take a breath, sit with the urge for a moment, and then choose to move on afterwards. And like I said before, the best part is the more you resist opening these notifications, the quieter and less frequent they become over time. I'm sure now, if your addiction is really compulsive and you don't feel you've had much progress, these urges are probably a huge challenge for you, just as they were for me. But I still get urges. Are they remotely close to what they used to be a few years ago? No, not at all. The urges I get today are probably at 10% of the strength. Like, it's not even close. And the frequency of them, oh, it's nothing. They cut back by 90%. So when they're less in strength and less in frequency, they don't cause as large of an impact. When you sit through urges and you choose not to act on them, this is when your brain can do an update. It can rewire itself and recognize that it doesn't have to go back to the old wiring that used to give a relief. And instead, your brain will start with the new wires. You have your healthier coping methods. And that's where the real change comes. I want you guys to take this away from today's episode. Urges are not the enemy. They are just notifications. Your brain is sending you an old message, thinking it's trying to help you, but you get to decide what you do with that message. You can pause, acknowledge you're receiving the message, breathe through it, and move on with your day. You have that choice. Every time you do that, every time you let an urge pass instead of reacting, your brain rewires. It learns that you don't need porn to survive discomfort, loneliness, stress. You're teaching it a new way to find relief, which maybe is through connection, through movement, purpose. Or maybe you're just building a tolerance to stronger emotions that you used to find very difficult. So the next time that urge hits, I want you to remember that it's not an emergency. It is just a message. You don't have to open it. You don't have to follow the urge. You can pause, sit with it, understand it, and move on with your day. If this episode helps you see urges differently, share it with someone who's in this recovery with you. And if you've been enjoying the podcast so far, leaving a review helps more men find this show, and it means a lot to me personally as well. Thanks for spending the time with me today, and I'll see you guys in the next one.